What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I am super pumped today because we've got a very special guest for you. She's an incredibly talented entrepreneur and award-winning business coach with work that's been featured in Huffington Post, TEDx, Inc., Forbes, and more. She's also received the ClickFunnels 2 Comma Club Award, which, if you're not familiar with that, is basically it just means that she was able to generate over seven figures with a single online sales funnel, and it was done in less than 2 weeks, which is insane. She's also got a free toolkit that you can get called How to Turn Your Life Experience into Income Through Information Products and Services. And I totally recommend that you go check this out if you're interested at all in building your business online. And you can get that at her website, baileyrichert.com. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Bailey Richert.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you taking time to, talk to our audience and hopefully share some of your wisdom and experience with us. I was doing a little bit of research, which I try to do for every interview. And
Sure.
I actually came across an interview that you did where you had mentioned something that you did a while ago. And to be honest, I am super jealous. I wish I would have had this experience too. So you got to tell me, how cool is Space Camp?
Oh my goodness. Space Camp was amazing. I can't believe that you brought that up. I went when I was in high school. I won a scholarship from a local organization when I was in high school. And I'm not joking with you. I think I had the choice. I could choose whether or not I wanted to go to math camp or space camp. And I was like,
Yeah.
space camp, obviously. It's in Huntsville, Alabama. And you know what? This was such a unique experience. First of all, it was the coolest thing ever. It was the coolest thing. I don't know if they have programs for adults, but if they do, people got to do it. But what's so cool is that my other camp mates, I mean, it was a really small group. There was like 12 of us that were doing it that week. They were all from Australia. They were actually visiting the United States to spend 1 week at Disney World and 1 week at Space Camp. And I got to meet them. And guess what? All these years later, we've remained friends, and I'm actually going down to Australia and New Zealand next year to meet them again.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was one. I mean, I've always been really interested in international travel. I've always wanted to explore the world, but that was one of the most distinct early experiences I can remember in my life where I had interaction with citizens from another country and really had that cross-cultural, multicultural experience, where they made me try Vegemite, which was disgusting. And, we talked about the differences in our countries and the way of life. And it was so cool.
Yeah, I love that. And did you get to do like that weightless thing that they do in the airplanes? Was that part of it?
We didn't get to do the we didn't fly up and we weren't literally weightless, but they had all of these different things for us to do on the ground where, they put you in the center of that ball that like goes all around.
Yeah.
And we did scuba diving, which apparently is how they sometimes train astronauts because like the weightlessness of being like below the water, so many feet below, you can literally lift a huge concrete ball with just your hand. And so it was, they, would try to make you practice like wearing big space gloves and like tools and what that was like. And it was so cool.
That's awesome. And I've always been like a space nerd and geeked out on the whole, everything outside of the world. So I heard that and I was like, oh man, I wish I would have been able to do that when I was younger. For sure. Yeah. And I got to look and see, like you say, if they have something for adults, I'm signing up.
That was the first time I had ever flown on a plane. I went all by myself down to Huntsville, Alabama.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. And like you said, that experience of meeting other, someone from another culture is really eye-opening, and I can relate to that because when I first met, somebody that wasn't from America, like you said, it really just opens your eyes to the fact that the world is a big place and that there's a lot more out there than, your city or your town or whatever it is you're used to. So
definitely.
have that.
Yeah, it was definitely a part of my formative experiences that made me into the international traveler that I am today. I've been, at this time of this recording, I've been to over 30 countries, did a few study abroads when I was in college, did some work with Engineers Without Borders in Kenya, did, some personal travel and vacations and things. And now with the lifestyle that I have, I often travel for pleasure, but it's also work. It's not a vacation. It's just, I'll go somewhere for a month or two. Last year I was in Buenos Aires for a while. I went to Cuba for a week also to celebrate my birthday. And then this year, it's July now. So September, I'm going down to Colombia for a month. And then next year, as I mentioned, Australia and New Zealand. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Awesome. Yeah, no doubt. Your list is making me jealous. I've been to some places, but not that many, that's for sure. Very cool. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it. And I'm sure that that story kind of ties into maybe my next question, which, is really like, how'd you get started in entrepreneurship? And is this something you've always wanted to do, or is this kind of a recent development for you?
Sure. So that's a great question. Well, I think that I was taught definitely from an early age by my parents that education and the sort of traditional American dream was the way to go. And I always pursued that path. I love school. Honestly, I love learning and I love being challenged. I studied hard in high school and became valedictorian and won a scholarship to go to university to study engineering. So I graduated from undergrad with my bachelor's and my master's actually, and then wound up in California for a few years doing the environmental consulting gig. And it was around the age of 25 when I started to honestly have a quarter life crisis. That's how I would describe it. And it's exactly like what you think. It's a midlife crisis. It's what everybody, supposedly goes through when they hit 40, when they start thinking about their life. Only I was going through it at the age of 25. And even though at the time it was pretty miserable, I was actually having really physical reactions to the struggles that I was going through. It actually turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it forced me to really take a look at the life that I was living and to decide, is this what I wanted for the rest of my days? And of course it wasn't. I lived a great life. I was in California. It was always sunny. As an engineer, it's a societally respectable job. And, I had a great apartment, car, all that stuff. But I was still feeling so unfulfilled. And when I thought about all the things I wanted in my life, I did want to travel more. I did think I could be making a bit more money. I wanted to see my family more because they lived all the way on the other side of the country, back in Pittsburgh, where I grew up and where I live now. And, I wanted more time to dedicate to my philanthropy. It just always felt like, anybody who's worked a 9 to 5 knows what that feels like. The grind of waking up every day and, doing your full day. And I was driving from Orange County, where I was living at the time, to Los Angeles 3 or 4 times a week for work because I had to go meet clients and things. And it was just really, really intense. So anyway, I decided to leave that and pursue entrepreneurship, but that road was long. I ended up actually leaving my 9 to 5 and enrolling at MIT for grad school so that I could both study entrepreneurship, but also use that time freedom to grow my business. Because as you can imagine, with the 9 to 5, it's not impossible, but it is difficult, certainly. And I was really having a tough time. So I really wanted some more time freedom. And grad school, just like undergrad, you know what it's like in college. You go to a class from 9 to 10, then you have all day free to study or do your dissertation or what have you. So I would use all that time to build my business, and that really gave me a lot of time. I always tell people, though, whenever I tell the story, I want to make sure people know that I went to grad school because it was paid for. MIT is a research university, and I didn't pay a dime for my education. And I was also paid a stipend because I was a researcher at the school. All the grad students at MIT in the engineering departments are. And so I don't want to encourage anybody to spend $100,000 to go back and get their MBA or something. I didn't get an MBA. I got a degree in the engineering department and studied entrepreneurship while I was there. It was a really unique program. But I don't endorse people, getting themselves into further debt to start a business. You don't have to do that. And that's actually one of the biggest things that I'm a proponent of is, with the info product space that I'm in, ebooks, courses, and all that, the startup costs are actually really small compared to, brick and mortar businesses or even e-commerce where you have a lot of cost of goods and inventory. But for me, it was just needing the time to be able to dedicate to this because I wanted it to happen, and I wanted it to happen quickly. I knew that by the time I graduated, I wanted to be fully self-employed, which I was, but it was definitely a ride. So long story short, that's how I got to where I am today.
That's awesome. And it sounds like it must have been a bit of a challenge for you, I would imagine, at least, because I know that I was kind of in the same position, going from a very stable job, a 9 to 5 that is consistent, it's guaranteed, you're gonna have a paycheck and you've got all of your benefits and everything that rolls into that. Was it tough for you? I understand that you had other desires and other dreams and ambitions, but was that a hard thing for you to quit and change that path?
I'm going to be honest with you that it wasn't really for me internally. I didn't really struggle with my decision. I felt comfortable knowing that I was going from my job to MIT. So there was a significant amount of security there. But even in my transition from MIT to full-time self-employment, I didn't necessarily feel stressed about it. But that's because each one of those moves was calculated. You know, it was a calculated risk ultimately. You know, my finances were all in order. I knew what I was doing. Like I said, not taking on more debt. They were smart choices. And honestly, like I mentioned before, my panic attacks and my anxiety and then the stress that I was under when I was going through my quarter life crisis was so intense that I honestly felt like I had to do something or I wasn't going to make it. You know, it was too rough. So I knew in my heart that I'd been struggling with this for a while. And when I say that I was undergoing a quarter life crisis, it wasn't like I made this decision in a weekend. I mean, this was something that I, was battling for a while. And the people that were closest to me understood my decisions, my parents, my family. And I am very, very blessed to have incredibly supportive parents who trust me to make those decisions and they wanted the best for me. Certainly my colleagues at my engineering job did not understand it, and a lot of other people that were not privy to the inner workings of my mind and my thoughts and what I was going through at that time didn't understand. I didn't really become public about the life crisis that I was going through until I did my TEDx talk, where I shared that experience in a formal setting for the first time. So a lot of what I was struggling with, I was going through it alone when I went through it for the first time. But even still, there was a lot of people that said, you've dedicated so much time to your life already studying engineering, and this is what, you were meant to do. And to those people, I said, well, it was a career path that I enjoyed at the time because it was a challenge, but I don't think I ever really considered what that was going to mean for me long term and for my life. And I did enjoy it. I do enjoy it. I still consider myself an engineer. I still have my certifications and all that sort of stuff. My diplomas don't expire when you decide to pursue a different, career path. But at the same time, I knew that there were other things in my life that I wanted that being an engineer or being a consultant was never going to be able to give me. And those things were and are more important to me. I live in Pittsburgh now. My family's based here. I have a beautiful niece who I absolutely adore, and the lifestyle freedom that I have gives me time to spend with her whenever I please. The ability to travel, as we mentioned, and just to pursue, to craft the life that I want. I was actually talking to a friend the other day about this concept of being an active participant in your own life. Mm-hmm. Versus being a passive engager or a passive participant. And I think that there's so many people in this world who they were on the path that I was on, admittedly, for a while, and they're just really passive and they let life happen to them. It's like, well, how did you get this job? Well, I just found it. Someone came to me, I was searching Indeed.com one day. I was on Craigslist or something, right? And that's like very passive. It's not, I'm making a plan for my life that I'm going to pursue. That's active. And I wanted to be an active participant in my life and to craft the life that I wanted. So
I love that distinction. And I totally agree that actively making choices and making decisions is what is going to create the change that you want and that you wish for yourself. And, I think it's a really powerful story that you shared, talking about all of these struggles and sort of, this feeling that just life is not the way you want it to be, And there's a lot of people, like you mentioned, that are kind of in this position right now where they're just not happy. They don't necessarily know why, but they know that they're not happy. I mean, what is some advice? I mean, I know that for you, you were very calculated and like you said, you had family support, which is really, really important. But what's some advice that you could give to people that maybe, they're not happy in their situation and maybe they don't have that support? Like, how can they sort of reevaluate and take a step back and then become more active, in their role in life?
Right. So that's a great question. And actually, this is exactly what I tackled in my TEDx talk. So if it's okay to tell people to go watch that, I think TEDx talks are non-pitchy. So it's all content and value. But in the TEDx talk, it's called Life Crisis, Start a Business. That's what it is. And there's basically what I did was I went through a life crisis, and then starting a business is partly what helped me get out of that. But not just the fact that I started a business. More importantly, when you start a business, you are forced to ask yourself some questions about how you want to create that business. And those questions can then inform your true desires and help you shape the life that you really want. So in the TEDx talk, I cover 6 questions that you can ask yourself when you're going through a life crisis that can help you determine what it is that you really want. Some of the questions, for example, are about community. So sometimes we're really unhappy in our 9-to-5 because our coworkers are often our friends, but they're not people that we chose. I'm sure they're wonderful people, but they're people that we just happen to meet because we happen to get a job at that company. So when you're in entrepreneurship, you get to decide who it is that you want to be a part of your circle. Who do I want to be my peers? Who do I want to hire as my employees or my colleagues? Who do I want to serve as clients? And there is a lot more intention around the community that you build. So one of the questions is, who do you want to have in your life? If you could craft the community that you wanted to be a part of, what would that look like? And then where do you go and find those people, right? So that's only one example, but like I mentioned, there's 6 questions in the TED Talk that I outline that can really help you start to think about things more specifically, more concretely, where you can say, all right, this isn't just an abstract question, like what am I supposed to do with my life? Because that's very paralyzing. It doesn't really help. But there are just like really 6 specific questions where you can say, I'm good at this is my talent, or this is something I would like to have in my life. This is a goal. This is the community that I desire. This is, and so we go through the certain steps. So that's what the TEDx talk is all about.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure, guys. You guys listening, after this is over, definitely Google TEDx Talk, Bailey Richert. I'm sure it'll come right up, and check that out. And then I'll also link it down below in the show notes for sure, because I think that that's really critical to get your mind right before, trying to start any kind of entrepreneurial adventure. So let's go ahead and transition, Bailey, into the digital marketing space and like this whole social media world that we live in. Because as you mentioned, you built your business as an infopreneur, which is basically an entrepreneur that sells info products, right? You sell your,
that's exactly it.
Your experience, So how is... in my mind, it seems like social media has kind of allowed for this to happen. But at the same time, now that I'm thinking about it, info products have been sold, through like TV commercials. And they've been available forever, right? Is social media, though, is this helping you sort of build that business faster? Is it like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, social media is absolutely a critical part of any infopreneur's content strategy, right? But it's only one part.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of people that are doing social media incorrectly because they're just shouting into the void. They think that social media is us posting and sharing our content with other people, right? But that's actually a really inaccurate way to use social media if you want to get clients and grow your business. Social media is social for a reason. It's all about connecting with other people, human to human. That's how business is really done. And on a much broader note, infopreneurs in general, we're seeing a huge trend now. It's basically become the norm for people who want to leverage their own life experience, knowledge, and passions to create and sell info products, to do it with a personal brand. Maybe 5 to 10 years ago, anybody that was kind of trying to make money online, even as sort of a personal brand, they would come up with like a cutesy blog name, right? There's so many entrepreneurs and travel bloggers and stuff like that would do that. We're seeing a huge shift away from that into people just really, adopting their personal brand as their name, like BaileyRichert.com. I'm a personal brand, because you as an infopreneur are the expert. You are your first case study. People come to you because they not only see the knowledge that you have, that's part of it, but they see the results that you've gotten. They want what it is that you have in your own life. And also, just people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? It's a cliche in our industry, but it's a cliche because it's true. You'll hire me because you know me, we've met, you like me, you like my personality, you like what I stand for, you trust that based on our previous interactions, I'm going to treat you well and that I'm going to live up to my end of the bargain, the contract, right? So that's one of the ways that we're kind of like moving in business now. In the coming years, it's going to be even stronger, I think. And so when we're talking about social media, it's not about positioning yourself up here and everybody else is down here. It's about mingling and mixing and getting to meet people, joining those Facebook groups, delivering value, talking with people in your private messages and your DMs and things like that. What are your struggles? How can I help? Let's see if this is a good fit. And being really honest about what you can and cannot help people with. I think one of the biggest things that I really see a lot of infopreneurs who are getting started struggle with is kind of identifying who their ideal client is, because they're so desperate for cash when they're just getting started, they'll take any client. And so what happens is they end up building up this portfolio or this repertoire of, so many different skill sets and clients all over the place, when what they really need to do is focus in and only accept the people as clients who really fit in exactly to the services they want to offer, and say no to everyone else. No, thank you. I can't help you with that. That's not my area of expertise. I get tons of people that come to me and they want to ask me about retail, e-commerce, MLM, brick and mortar, that kind of stuff. And I say no to all of them, because even though there may be some small elements that overlap, because business is business, and if you can do business in one business, maybe you can do it in another. But I don't want to be known as an e-commerce coach. I'm not an e-commerce coach. I don't know anything about e-commerce. I am the info products girl. I'm infopreneurship. And that's why people come to me. And so anybody that slightly misunderstands what I do and they come to me and they want help in something that I don't offer, I have to say no thank you and point them in a different direction. That's the only way that you're going to be able to grow your brand solidly, is if you commit to that one thing and say, I am this and I am nothing else.
Yeah, I love that, actually. And you basically just described me early in my journey, where I was, like you said, I was trying to take on everything that I could, because obviously we've got bills to pay. And, when you're starting out, I think that kind of is the path that a lot of people take. But saying no is critically important to growing. It's fine in the beginning, I guess, to try to get your feet wet and, like you say, dabble in as many skills as you can. That way you can at least see what you like. You can see what you're good at, and kind of figure that out. But at some point you really do have to pick a line and stay on it, and I think it's also another great distinction that you made with social media, where, it's not us up here and everyone else down here. And this is something that I talked about in a different interview, where for some reason with entrepreneurs, we feel like we need to try to put ourselves out there and make ourselves look bigger than we are.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we want people to think that we're all that, but the thing is that inauthenticity it's so, like, you can smell it, and you can see through it. And that actually draws people away from you. Like, they don't want to work with you. They can tell that, you're faking the funk. And so if you're faking the funk, it's just not going to work. And social media for sure is about being social, and just, everybody on there is trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to figure it out together. So that's a great distinction. What are some skill sets that would be required to actually be successful as, somebody who's self-employed? I mean, because as we know, sometimes going from the 9 to 5, you're giving up that 40-hour work week for like 100-hour work week as an entrepreneur. People
sometimes, yes.
They think it's going to be roses and everything like that, but it's not, clearly. So what are some, I guess, characteristics of successful entrepreneurs in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, the first one, of course, that comes to mind is discipline. And I mean, I think that goes both ways, though. Of course, there's the discipline that you have to force yourself to sit down and do the work. But I find that that's actually not really the case with most people. The problem what we have is we don't have enough discipline to stop working. I mean, if you're building your business and you're really dedicated to it and you love what you do, then you are just going to be there all the time. And now you don't really have those sort of like built-in societal structure. It's not like, oh, it's 5 o'clock, the workday is over, I go home, and now society tells me that because it's evening, I'm allowed to be relaxing, right? We don't have that anymore, because we didn't go to an office in the morning. We didn't leave an office in the morning. Our clients are always there. People are pinging us on our DMs and stuff all the time. So the issue is not having the discipline to do the work. I don't think I know any successful entrepreneurs that struggle with that. It's the discipline to take care of yourself, self-care, and to just be able to turn it off and to be able to keep that schedule. So that kind of leads me into the other thing I want to say, which is that a lot of people get into entrepreneurship because they want, lifestyle freedom, right? That's the buzzwords that we all talk about. And people that are not entrepreneurs think that lifestyle freedom means I can do whatever I want when I want. That is not what lifestyle freedom means. What it means is I'm in charge of my own schedule. That's what it means. So a lot of people just, especially when they're just kind of getting started with their entrepreneurial journey, they're like, the one thing I hated about my 9 to 5 was that it was like so set. Like I had to be at work at 9 and I had to leave at 5, and I hate that. I want to do whatever I want. And so they don't create a schedule for themselves. And so they just like kind of flounder out there for a while, and they go to sleep whenever they want. They wake up whenever they want. They do whatever they want all day. And lots of things suffer from that. Your own mental health and self-esteem and stuff is going to suffer from that because you don't have a regular schedule. Humans, whether we like it or not, we actually do like habit, whether we want to admit it or not. We actually do like habits and routine. It's healthy for us. But more importantly, your business is not going to grow that way because you're not going to be productive, because you're going to wake up every single day and you're going to sit down on your computer and you don't have a plan. You don't know what it is that you're doing. So you're just going to say, well, I guess I'll write a blog post today. You don't really know what it is that you need to do to move forward at every step. And so that's the thing. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of scheduling. And I always tell people that the schedule will set you free. If you really want to have lifestyle freedom, then having really firm boundaries and schedules can help you. Let me give you a perfect example. I do all of my client coaching calls on Tuesdays. Sometimes Wednesdays when I have lots of clients, I'll do Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But I do not let people just schedule calls with me whenever, all willy-nilly. I have a structure, which is that Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my call days. Thursdays is my other business day, get caught up from the clients, that sort of stuff, work on some new content. Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays are the weekend. I'm not saying that I never work on weekends. I do, but they are still trying to reserve them for weekend time. And then Monday is back at it, but no clients, because Monday is when I send out my weekly email newsletter every single Monday. So I'm fielding all of the responses from people to that. I'm prepping for the week, checking in with my clients before their Tuesday calls, making sure that everything is good, handling any customer issues that came up over the weekend and things like that. When you have a structure and you know exactly what it is that you can handle, you know how many clients you can take on, which means that you know how much you have to charge to live the lifestyle that you want to live. You know when you're going to be free for vacations and all that sort of stuff. Why do you think I do my client calls on Tuesday? It's because most people in my life are still working a 9-to-5 and they're only free on the weekends, which means that if I wanted to do a long weekend or vacation or something like that, I need to have my Thursday to Sunday or Thursday to Monday free. So that's why it's the perfect day for me. So just in a nutshell, you were asking about, what are some of the skill sets people need to have to be successful in entrepreneurship? Discipline, keep a schedule, keep to that schedule.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said, your schedule will set you free, because it's totally true. I mean, I struggle with this. I'm not going to lie. I definitely struggle with sticking to a schedule. I am kind of a spontaneous person, but at the same time, I get up every morning around 7 a.m. just because that's when I wake up, I try to go to bed by midnight. But yesterday, I was on the computer working for probably 18 hours and I didn't eat until 3 p.m. I really just forgot to eat, but it's so critically important that discipline that you mentioned, and it's not discipline to do the work, because clearly everybody has to do that. It's the discipline to know when to stop and when to, say no. And like you say, self-care is really important. And that actually it brings us into the next point that I want to talk to you about, which is the work-life balance. It's one of those things, some people think, oh, there's no such thing as work-life balance, because if you love your work, then it's not work, and that's one way to look at it. But in my opinion,
it's always still work. I'm sorry. I love photography, right? But I also used to do photography. I mentioned earlier that I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, and I did photography for payment. I guess you could call it professional photography, but I didn't have a studio or anything. But I did that in college for a little bit. I did some weddings and things, and I love it, but it turned into work, because
right.
When you take something that you're really passionate about and you turn it into a business, it becomes work. There's things that you have to do that are not your passion. If all I got to do was take pretty pictures all day, that would not be work. But that's not what it is to run a business.
Right. Yeah, no, it's always going to be work. And actually, if anything, I almost hesitate to tell people to turn their passion into their business, because it can kill that passion, right? If you're not careful about it, if you're not careful about how you approach the business aspect around whatever the thing is that you're passionate about, it can literally kill your passion and seep it from you. And then you never want to do that thing again. And
there is certainly that danger. I think that people need to come into their business with a healthy dose of reality, and they need to fully understand the role that they're taking on. There's people that say, well, I want to get into infopreneurship because all I want to do is teach and talk about this all day long. And I say, well, that is not all that running a business is. And I think it also depends on how big you want to grow. If you're a solopreneur that does everything yourself, you're probably going to be steeped in your passion for longer than people who grow, because when you grow, you move out of the passion and the content creation a little bit more and into the role of CEO, right? And so that means that you're more of a manager and less engaging with your passion. We were talking about photography. I have a photographer friend of mine who's a business owner, and she and I meet up for lunch all the time. And she was telling me how she now only does the photography part, the shooting part, like, I don't know, twice a month or something. But now she, has to outsources all of the editing and stuff, and she manages her staff. She has other photographers, other shooters that are working with her who do a lot of the, actual picture taking, and she's doing the bookkeeping and stuff. And so, she's an example of a business that's growing a ton, and she's kind of getting removed from the thing that she was so passionate about, right? So I think that
sure.
plays a part as well.
Yeah, and you just mentioned a great part of that, which is building a team, right? And understanding how to outsource certain elements of your business to other people so that it's not bogging you down. And I guess, that's actually a really difficult thing to do, to build a team of people that A, you can trust, and B, that do good work. But that's probably a whole nother podcast. We could talk about that. So I'm going to wrap this up with you, Bailey. I really hope you guys listening, that you're taking notes, that go back and listen to this, because you dropped some serious fire on us today. I really appreciate it. I have to ask you though, like, where you're at today with all the experience that you have, what is some advice that you would give yourself like 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, definitely buy your domain name. Make sure that I have BaileyRichert.com. Make sure that if infopreneurship or personal branding is something that you want to get into, make sure you go ahead and buy your domain name and secure all of those social media handles. But that's a very practical thing. I would say that if we're talking about like mindset or growth from where I was at before, Jim Carrey, the comedian and the actor, right? He once said a really famous quote, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he talked about how depression and anxiety and stuff is your body or your person getting sick of playing the role, right? Is sick of putting on that mask and playing the avatar. I don't think I fully understood that even when I was going through my life crisis. I just thought like I felt stifled, or I was, undergoing some transitional period. But now that I've been out of it for a while, I can see that he was exactly right. And that's exactly what was happening, was that there were so many elements of myself that I was suppressing. And there were so many things that I wanted in my life that I was being held back from achieving because of this very specific role that was largely defined by my job in my life. And so one of the things I guess I would just say to people is that, number one, pay attention to those gut instincts, and, pay attention to what your body is telling you and to what your mind is telling you. It's important for your overall long-term health and happiness. That being said, don't make rash decisions. I do see people a lot of times say, I hate my job so much, and, I listened to someone on this podcast and now I'm going to quit my job. Don't do that. Like I mentioned, every single risk or move that I took was calculated for me. It was the right decision for me. And it was what I needed to do in my life to be able to move forward towards the person that I wanted to be. And there were certain times when it did feel like I was taking 5 steps backwards. And there were certain times where it felt like I was sprinting forwards. It's not always going to be a steady pace where you take step, step, step. It doesn't always work like that. But now I can speak for myself only in that, looking back, it was all worth it. And I feel that even if it doesn't all work out perfectly 100% down the road, at least your attempts and efforts to make that change is going to have an impact and a difference on the way you feel and the way you see about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I really appreciate your time today and all of your experience that you shared with us. Tell everybody how they can find you and what you've got going on in your world.
Thank you. Yes. So if everyone just wants to head over to BaileyRichert.com, they'll find links to all of my courses, the free ebook and toolkit that you mentioned right there on my homepage. There's a button you can opt in for that. And there's also a contact page as well if people want to get in touch, or you can send an email directly to contact@BaileyRichert.com.
Awesome. There you guys have it. And if you are at all interested in creating info products, building your business online, go check out Bailey, because she is the queen. I mean, you were killing it. Seriously. I've been watching you from the sidelines, and I saw your presentation at Funnel Hacking Live. It was absolutely incredible. So Bailey, thank you again so much for being on the show today, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.